Hello and welcome to the Human Echoes recap for Legion Season 2, Episode 1, Chapter 9. Legion's back, baby! The weirdest show that I watch on television is just swimming its way back into your brain right off of that screen once again. And last season, when I recapped this show, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on. To the point where I'm almost not sure that anything's going on anymore. I could not definitively say to you people that any of this is real in the sort of sense that you would think of it as being real in the fictional world. It feels like literally every scene is designed to make you doubt what you're watching. Which I love on a certain level, but I also want there to be like a resolution here, a specific thing that we can say is definitely true. And I don't know if we're gonna get to that, or if I'm smart enough to get to that. To top that all off, just to prepare you guys for this thing that I'm gonna be doing, these episodes are so densely packed with these little asides and sound effects making, like implying things and little like stuff happening in the background in all of these scenes that I'm 100% positive I'm going to miss something relatively significant, okay? I'm going to do my best. I have notes. I take notes like I do in every show. But without just having like the entire script ahead of me and like Noah Hawley whispering in my ear, don't forget about this, I did this for this reason. I'm gonna fall flat on giving this the complete treatment. But here we go. Let's dive in to the weirdo glucose suspension chamber and try to figure out what we can figure out. And we start off with something that I've not heard a lot of people talk about, which is, because I read the subreddit, right? I like to go in and find out, especially on this show, does anybody have better ideas than me on what's going on? And the opening scene here is Lenny and Oliver laying in a pool, right? They're sunning. My first thought in this, just sort of like out of nowhere, was, holy crap, those guys are gonna get a sunburn. Like, there's no shade, they don't appear to be wearing sunscreen. I live in Florida, and sunburn is not a fun time. I hope that they were adequately protected for their skin. But it doesn't matter because it's probably a dream. All right, Lenny and Oliver are laying in this pool, and Lenny says to Oliver, "We're trapped." And then at some point she says it's Tuesday, to which Oliver replies, "I don't like to talk about time." So there's a lot of things just in this to unpack. I think, so we know from the end of last season, Oliver has been taken over by Farouk, by the Shadow King. Here's my interpretation of what we're seeing here. We've got real Lenny-ish, like what's left of her mind from when Farouk had used her as sort of an avatar to represent himself, and real Oliver's mind sort of inside this illusion that the Shadow King has created while Farouk is controlling the body of Oliver. And we're getting clues because later on there's going to be a lot of stuff about time and potential time travel, how much time has passed. Time plays a huge, important part in this episode, which I didn't get until sort of the very end. Why it was so important that they kept asking him, what did he remember, how much time had passed. They very specific on how much time has passed. But we see all of Legion is a little bit like this, but I think with this we can definitively say that this is definitely illusion because Oliver wants his drink refilled at some point. A hand pops up out of the pool to give him one, and then we cut immediately to an overhead shot where there's like nobody there. So It feels like illusion stuff. And then we get a sort of disembodied voice talking to somebody about a maze in a desert. That just goes on and on and on. It's almost, we get like a zoom out from this, maze pattern that seems very, very large. And there's like a black screen that, or at least maybe if you have to have super HD to see that that's continuing on, but it just looked black to me after they zoomed out for a certain point. And then we get to the room full of people with their teeth clicking, which is, for me, I think the most evocative image of the show. Just like I love it when you have a huge group of people all doing the same thing, sort of mindlessly in some way, or even large groups of things that are all the same. Like if you have a room, I always cite this in the show Seven, when they walk into I think it's Gluttony's room, and there's all of those air fresheners hanging from the ceiling, kind of like constellations. That gets me going. That stuff's great. And we're going to find out later that this is the result of some mind control thing that Farouk has done to people as he's going around the world collecting bodies. And it's not clear to me, I guess, and this is just a guess, but from what I can tell, putting it together sort of back to front, Division 3 finds these people, they can't fix them, so they've brought them all to their facility to just sit in a dark room and teeth chatter for a while, which, A, I don't know what they tell their families, or, again, if anything is even real in this show, and B, it seems like a real bad idea to have people who have all been infected by the Shadow King in one location. Maybe he's expecting that, but I don't know. And then we get to David. David's back. They've got him back somehow, right? He just sort of... I love that they just drop him in. Like, the end of last season was him getting kidnapped, screaming, running away. And not running away, but being flown away from the thing. And then, here we are, and he's just back again. And we have to put together for ourselves... I mean, not completely for ourselves. They have information, but sort of piece together what went wrong throughout the episode and really throughout, I assume, the whole season. But also, as I mentioned earlier, I believe gives them an opportunity to sort of recap things for the audience. Excellent storytelling device here, that you have this character who's been out of it for a while. He's thrown, back into it, and he's like, what's going on? Why am I here? Why are we here with these people? And they have to explain to him, well, you've been gone, and your memory's weird, but we're working with Division 3 now. The bad guys from last season, now we're with them. We've made a deal. Apparently, Melanie and Sid just sat down and talked it out, and they're cool now, if any of this is real. Because you can never be sure. I want to be like, they have many of these conversations in a restaurant where a river of waffles is going by. Immediately after David woke up and said, do you have any waffles? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. There's no indication, like, literally that this is a dream. I mean, it's weird, but they did? They just had waffles? Did David know that? I mean, he's psychic, kind of, so I guess he could have picked up that there was somebody cooking a bunch of waffles and, like, translated that into a craving. And then there's just a river of waffles. There's also just the sort of practical side of it for me is this a real place that you can go, or did they build this as a set? Because both of those are equally buck wild as answers. If it's a real restaurant where you can go and eat off of a river of waffles, what is even life? And if they built it as a set, I went into the wrong career, man. I need to rethink my decisions and go into set building so that I can make a river of waffles for somebody someday. Yowza. I also don't see anybody eating off of the river. I don't know how the food delivery there works. So you just take a bowl or what? Everybody already has their food. Maybe the waffle rivers are just the rivers, the waffles in the river. Maybe they're just decorative, right? Maybe they're like plastic and they look real, like those like Japanese restaurants that make plastic food to go out front. I don't know, but that would make as much sense as literally anything else in this movie, so whatever. And we get, a scene then after we've got a basic introduction to where we're at. with David and Sid. Now, before, I guess I should mention, we have our basket head character and these weirdo, somebody called them androgenous droids. They like mashed those two together in a portmanteau. Weirdo, auto-tuned, odd hair characters that all sort of orbit around this guy with the basket on his head, whose name I've forgotten, General Fukuyama or Admiral Fukuyama or something like that. Something Japanese, and I have no idea what his deal is. He seems to be in charge of Division 3, from what I can tell. But he's, he sort of is in the room when David's initially getting debriefed, and, then David asks for waffles, and eventually he meets up with Sid, and Sid is very concerned with what David remembers. And David claims to be missing time, like that he doesn't remember. And they cut it a little bit interesting where maybe there's some stuff that parts of David remember that he's keeping from himself. With the conceit of the comic is that he has multiple personalities, and my interpretation of season 1 was that a lot of the people that he was interacting with, including Sid, including Ptolemy, including Melanie Bird, that all these people were actually projections of himself in different aspects of his powers. And that does not seem to have turned out to be true. Although, again, who can say exactly if there's anything that's totally true in all of this? But he, he's trying to reconnect with Sid, and it's clear throughout this episode that there's something kind of lost there. They still care about each other, but there's this weird distrust almost that's grown up between them, where she wants him, right? There's that great, like, can I kiss you? You better line. And they get it on in sort of various locations. Again, is this real? Do they go have sex in like 5 different places and we just get a montage? Or are they going inside Sid's, like, what does she do? She goes inside other people, right? And then, I don't know how all this works, okay? This is what I'm saying. David's also psychic, so maybe this is a projection of his mind. But she, after they sort of have their sexy times, talks to him about what's going on. And she says that they've been looking for Farouk for the last 362 days, which I did not check. It would be very fun if it has been 362 days since Legion has been on the air. I don't remember exactly what that timeline was like, but I don't know if there's any significance to that specific number at all, if they're getting meta or if it's, some other significant thing. But they've been tracking Farouk, right? They've been trying to get this guy who hurt David in season 1, and he's this, also known as the Shadow King. He's got super duper mental powers. He's inside Oliver, and all that they know for sure is that he's looking for his body, that he wants to get back to his body because his disembodied mind is very powerful, but inside of his original form, with the actual physical mutation that he has to make it real, that would basically make him ultimate godlike power, right? So we have an escalation of tension where it's not just some guy that we've already beat before. Now he's potentially going to get himself even more power, and they've been trying to stop him. The thing they keep running into, though, is this catalyst, is what they call it, that is causing people to have these teeth-chattering episodes and essentially freeze up. They haven't been able to get to him. They make mention of this nightclub, which is going to come back later. They say that they almost got him there. David was obviously there. We say the dance-off later where David's there. That's the rundown of essentially what the mutants are up to with Division 3 now. And this idea that Farouk has a body, they go into specifics also of when he was born. They say around the 1800s, I think. Although they also talked about the Egyptians having a different name for him. So I don't know if he got reincarnated or if I misheard something, but it seems like he's definitely at least over a couple hundred years old. And he's trying to find this, whatever this old version of his body was. I just thought about the idea of Farouk and Wolverine being the same person, because they were both born in the 1800s, and that's, or at least having met each other, right? Like the if Hugh Jackman pops up later on in the season and is helping him out with something, and just like doesn't even, like, there's no mention of him being Wolverine or anything, it's just him, that would be a lot of fun. But we do have several flashes of this guy, this bald guy, walking through the crowd in the nightclub at various points. Is this character shown, and he looks like a normal human dude. I think we see his face, and he's got like a mark on his face. And my impression is that is Farouk's body. I don't know what it's doing walking around without him. Like, who's controlling Farouk's body? Why is it so long-lived? I mean, it's a mutant, so we could, whatever, hand wave. But what does it mean for Farouk to be split off from this thing, but also this thing still be having independent autonomy? I have no idea. But hey, it's Legion, so just shrug your shoulders and roll with it. Sid, after she has this encounter with David, goes to see Melanie, and Melanie is in not a great place. She unloads on Sid this sort of diatribe about how their men will always leave them and it will never be their fault, but you know, they'll still leave anyway, maybe forever. And it's interesting because it feels very real, first of all. It's relevant to her situation and to Sid's situation. You can see Sid kind of like trying not to listen, but also thinking about what she's saying. But you also have, throughout the course of the episode, this loudspeaker in Division 3 warning you what the potential symptoms of this infection by the Shadow King are, and one of them is despair, all right? Despair, ideas that are not your own, repetitiveness, which then the voice repeats because it's all dream world logic. But you know, this feels, in a vacuum from all of that, this does feel like a very real reaction from Melanie, because she's spent her whole life fighting, right, to get her husband back. She did get him back for a short time. She spent her life fighting Division 3, and she was doing a good job at that. And what happens at the climax of the last season? Her husband disappears again, all right? And Division 3 essentially takes over their whole unit. She's got nothing left, so you could see why she would just be sitting in her room getting high. I don't see why there's a wheelchair demon rolling through her room. I don't know what that was. This show, it just shows you stuff. It just shows you a thing. It's like, here's the thing dragging itself with like a wheelchair for hind legs through her room. It's giant, and it's just there. We're just gonna hold on that shot for a bit. Okay, next scene. No explanation. I assume that thing will come back. I hope so anyway. It's cool looking design. But I don't know what it means. I don't have the first clue. Probably she's infected now. Maybe that's a harbinger of the infection, but who knows? And we get after this the famous parable of Zhuang Zhu, and who dreamed he was a butterfly, and he was a butterfly for so long that he forgot he was Zhuang Zhu until he woke up from his dream and did not know if he was a butterfly who was dreaming he was Zhuang Zhu, or Zhuang Zhu dreaming he was a butterfly. My response to that parable, the favorite one that I've always gone back to, is the one Terry Pratchett wrote, which is when someone told him that, not him, but a character in the story gets told that story, and he's like, well, did he write about it using a pen and paper, or did he scratch it out with his antennae? Because I think that would be a pretty good indicator, guys. I don't deliver it as good as Terry Pratchett, sorry. But it seems like the kind of thing that it sounds profound when you're high, but then you think about it, you're like, well, no, it's just a dude who had a dream. The other story here that's very interesting is the story of, I forget what the guy's name, something A. I'm going to say Adam A., who at some point trips and decides that in the process of tripping, becomes infected with the delusion that his leg is not his own. That he has, like, the leg that's attached to him that hurts if he pokes it and feels things and moves when he tells it to move, that's not actually his leg. And he gets limb dysmorphia, progressing to the point where, in this montage, we see him cutting his own leg off. And somebody in the forums that I read was pointing out that it's his, I believe, left leg. And when we see Sid later on, she has her left arm missing. And in the, little creepy creature that is attacking the chick, in the sort of montage that we see, the little black ooze creature, it eats the chick's left wing. So all of these things kind of mirror each other. I think that next to, I said my favorite image from this episode was the people with their teeth chattering in the room. But a real close runner-up is this idea of the delusion eggs, of this little black slime monster hatching out of an egg. The special effects, by the way, are just, they don't do a lot of what I would call special effects in this show. There's a lot of camera tricks and lighting tricks and things that are weird because of how the set is designed, right, and how you're cutting between shots. But when they do decide we're gonna have a creature on screen, it's amazing. I don't think that this is any physical. I'd be really impressed if it's a physical effect, let's say that. I'm pretty sure it's CG, but it really works well for what it is. And we have this idea of delusions that can be introduced into the minds of people. It seems like it would be linked up with Farouk and the Shadow King, but I mean, as I keep saying, I don't know that we can put a flag down and say definitively almost anything, but this thing, probably a tool of the Shadow King. And David eventually comes to the realization as they're, as they're talking about what's going on with Farouk, that what is going on here, because he goes and talks to the general, right, or admiral or whatever, basket head guy. And they're, he's talking about what he knows and what the general knows, and he says, it's a race, right? We're going on a race to Farouk's body. And the idea, obviously, is that they want to stop Farouk from getting his body back, because that would be real bad. And immediately following this, David gets put in this think tank thing that the mail carry has produced for him. It looks... I think what we're seeing here is a very low rent, and intentionally so, version of the thing that Professor X uses to sort of magnify his brainwaves. David is not Professor X, okay? He doesn't have access to quite that technology, but floating in this immersion pool with a bunch of glucose, which I love the ingredients of that, where it's like 5% strawberry syrup, because of course it is. Why would it not be? He starts to be able to access his memories or allow himself to access his memories. Again, I don't know exactly how all this is working. And he gets into the scene that I was most excited to see in this episode, which is the dance-off. Yeah, it's a superhero show, guys. I just want you to understand, we're in a Marvel superhero show. And in the opening episode of season 2, the villain, all right, the all-powerful, mind-controlling, world-ending villain and the hero go to a club and have a dance-off. And it's amazing. It's the best thing. Also, Aubrey Plaza's character, I all of a sudden blanked on her name. I have it right here, Lenny. Lenny's there too. She's doing her thing. And I read some clarification on Lenny because I think a lot of people might be confused. Last season, Lenny and the Shadow King were essentially the same person, but the way that Noah Hawley has described it, even though she was controlled by the Shadow King and was essentially his avatar, his puppet or whatever, there is still some aspect of the Lenny character that is her own self and thing that's separate and maybe a little bit annoyed at this point at like, okay, you got what you wanted. We're out of this guy's head. Can I go now? Those are essentially, that's, again, none of that's my original thoughts. That's what the creator Noah Hawley said. But they have this great dance off, and the interpretation of this, I think, is that these people are essentially having a battle of the wills. That rather than showing them fighting or shooting at each other or something, they've chosen to visualize this mental battle with dancing. It may have actually literally taken place as well in this club, because we know that they were tracking them to this club. So I don't know how all that fits in. There's so much I don't know. I'm just trying to stop saying that. But the idea here is that David has been fighting Farouk, even though he doesn't remember all of it. And there's questions about how much he remembers, because he does have the conversation with the psychologist guy from the first season, who says every time somebody had amnesia, I would eat ice cream and with my mom, which had a great ending to that scene where she's like, she died when I was 10. Just like the absolutely like deadpan delivery of the fact that his mom died after they spent a bunch of time together watching soap operas in bed. But he's not 100% convinced that David is telling the truth about not remembering. And when David gets out of the immersion tank, Sid asks him, hey, what did you see? What was it? And David lies. David straight up lies and says, nothing. Which we do see a lot of random images. He mentions that he sees random images, and we see things that seem to be random before the final, the real thing with the dance-off. So it's not 100% a lie, but he definitely omits some stuff that would have been helpful, I guess, to her. And she picks up on it. She says, listen, I know you. I know that you're not being 100% honest with me. And he responds by giving her this compass that he says Carrie made. We don't see that happen. But like a lot of things in this show, I guess we just have to assume that something at some point is real. And it's a compass that always points to him. It's a cool gesture, but I don't know what it means. I don't know where it's gonna go. Other than just being an easy plot device for when he disappears again. Like, we can find David, we can take the compass and go find him. That could be that's the way we're going with it, but I don't know. I hate how much I've said I don't know in this episode. We're almost done. In a flashback, David sees future Sid inside the ball. All right, here's what he does apparently remember. He's just been kidnapped from the last season, right? He goes into the ball, he yells for help. Nobody's going to help him. So he turns around, he walks into the darkness, and he sees this one-armed Sid which, by the way, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this. The fact that the lighting on her face is like weird and shifting. It looks like she's standing somewhere where the light is changing, but it's sped up like 100-fold. I don't know what that effect is, but it's amazing. And what we find out from this character is that she's from the future, or claims to be anyway. She can't speak, but she uses a little like light writing wand thing to talk to David. And her message is to David, help the Shadow King find his body. Now, a lot of people, and myself included, are very suspicious of this. I mean, David has just been kidnapped in a weird little ball. All right. The Shadow King may or may not still have an inside edge into his head. The Shadow King's out there on the run. It seems real likely that this is a construction of the Shadow Kings, and that the Sid that he's seeing in this ball is not real, that it's just a projection. And I mean, it doesn't even speak, right? So, and as we mentioned earlier, it's got the missing arm. Is that an indication that it's linked up with this delusion egg? Or is this the real Sid from the future, and she got the delusion and she's trying to fix things? So many questions, and here's the thing. I don't know how many of them are going to get answered. Like, I hope that you guys stick with me and with the series, but I can't promise you that, like, any of this stuff is going to, well, some of the stuff is going to be definitively. They'll say, you know, like in last season, we found out who the Shadow King was. We found out about Farouk. We found out about Lenny. But a lot of that stuff wasn't 100% uncertain to begin with. We always knew there was something going on with Lenny. It was just the details and the weirdness of, like, what she was and what, you know, the replacement factor and everything. It's a confusing show, is what I'm saying. But a lot of fun to watch. Probably the most inventive show on television, although I have heard people compare it to the new Twin Peaks, which I have not seen because I didn't see the old Twin Peaks. So I enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it a little bit less this season just because I've resigned myself to maybe not everything is going to point to something. There's a baby outside. I don't know if you can hear him. But maybe not everything is going to get resolved and mean something in the way that you would like it to. It's not necessarily the kind of puzzle where you're going to put it together and all the pieces are going to suddenly make sense. Or it will be. Maybe. We'll just have to keep watching and see. I definitely will be, and I hope that you guys will be too. If you like this video and or podcast, it's available in both formats. Go to our YouTube channel and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, on the YouTube channel especially, leave your comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Let me know what you think is real and what's not. If you have any idea more than I do what's going on, and I assume that you must. I can't imagine somebody having less of an idea than I do what's happening here. I really enjoy reading those comments, and also the comments where you guys are telling me that I'm wrong about stuff, because I am a lot of times. In any case, we'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Legion Recap. Season 2, Episode 2, coming up. I'm guessing it's going to be weird. You guys take care.